Welcome to this week's episode of On the Record. Sooner State voters will be headed to the polls this week with a long list of candidates awaiting them. Several Republicans and Democrats are vying for the U.S. Senator from the Sooner State. Meanwhile, all 5 U.S. representative seats are up for grabs. The governor's race also features a crowded field with 9 Republicans and 3 Democrats on the ticket. Voters also going to decide primary races for Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, State Treasurer, Superintendent of Public Instruction, and numerous state senator and state representative races. Again, the Oklahoma primary taking place this Tuesday, June 16th. We will, of course, have election results on our next episode and on our website, 4stateshomepage.com. Also on that ballot, a state minimum wage question. Now, if passed by voters, State Question 832 would gradually raise minimum wage from the current $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour by 2029. Those on both sides of the issue paint very different pictures of what may happen if Oklahoma's statewide minimum wage were to go up. Tanner DeLeon breaks down the debate.
This is something that is definitely going to affect every working Oklahoman.
Oklahoma's minimum wage of $7.25 an hour has not changed in nearly 20 years, but it could, starting this month if voters approve State Question 832.
There are so many people working really, really hard every single day and still aren't able to cover rent, bills, and basic necessities.
I think that Oklahomans just understand this is a common sense issue. The cost of gas, groceries, housing has just continued to climb, but wages have stayed the same.
3/4 of economists actually oppose wage hikes up to 15.
Rebecca Paxton with the nonprofit research organization Employment Policies Institute says raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour will hurt Oklahoma businesses.
Because the cost of labor has now basically doubled, businesses have to adapt to that. They might raise prices, which affects consumers. They may downsize their staff. They may schedule them for fewer hours. They may also have to lay off some staff.
But supporters point to other states that have increased their minimum wage.
Our friends in Arkansas, Nebraska, Missouri have raised their minimum wage. Missouri's raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour, Nebraska as well. We've not seen massive job loss. They still have a low cost of living. This is scare tactics from the opposition who just want to be able to, protect corporations who are paying people poverty level wages.
$7.25 an hour right now, which means if you're a working Oklahoman working full time, you're going to make $15,080 a year. That is just not livable. It's not going to cut it.
Though opponents argue minimum wage salaries are usually not permanent.
Minimum wage is generally considered a starting point. Obviously, it's different for everyone, but what we're seeing on average is that most people are getting a raise within 1 to 12 months of starting that job.
Meanwhile, Missouri Republican lawmakers are making the rounds in the Show Me State, holding a series of town hall meetings on Amendment 5. Recently, they were in Carthage to promote the state amendment. Dustin Latimer tells us about the proposal, why supporters say it'll help, and who opponents say it'll hurt.
From when it was instituted to where we are today.
Missouri State Senator Curtis Trent says Amendment 5 is about phasing out the state's income tax.
What Amendment 5 essentially says is that for the purposes of eliminating the income tax, the General Assembly would be able to replace income tax revenue with sales tax revenue.
During a town hall meeting in Carthage called Road to Zero, state lawmakers explained how the plan would work and what they say it would mean for Missouri families, workers, and businesses.
The constitutional amendment has some very specific guardrails on that. It has to be revenue neutral, both at the state level and the local level. And any expansion of sales tax at the local level, which would result in additional income for local governments, would be required to be used to either roll back sales tax to a lower level or to roll back property tax.
This is just giving the legislator the permission. They've given us a short window of time to do this, and it won't be anything that rushes through, and we're watching really closely how this affects revenue.
Supporters say income tax would be phased out gradually over time, giving lawmakers up to 5 years to modernize the sales tax system, and would broaden the tax base by allowing more items to be taxed. Opponents say it would result in higher sales tax.
The average Missouri household would pay more than $500 a year in additional taxes under Amendment 5. Now that hits hardest for working class families, senior citizens, retirees, veterans, disabled persons, Those with income that's exempt from state income tax now, like Social Security, they don't get much of an income tax break out of this, but they will pay that higher everything tax on goods and services they use every day.
It should not increase anyone's tax burden. What it should do is create a lot more transparency about how much taxes people are paying.
Constitutional Amendment 5 will appear on the August 4th ballot. Reporting in Carthage, I'm Dustin Latimer.
Could toll roads be coming to Northwest Arkansas? That's at least in the cards, according to the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission. Casey Smith takes a look at the plan and why it's being considered.
Are you going to accommodate all this new growth? What are you doing to make sure your projects can be planned, programmed, and funded and constructed here in Northwest Arkansas?
Those are the big questions the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission is looking to answer.
We're planning for 1 million population. We do a travel demand model. We look at a forecasted demand on our infrastructure of how much traffic will be on facilities like I-49 right out here.
One solution NWA RPC Executive Director Tim Conklin says is being considered is adding toll roads.
Here in Northwest Arkansas, we're not talking about tolling any existing freeway, highway, interstate.
Taking inspiration from the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and the Kansas City Metro for the study proposal, designed to alleviate traffic congestion.
We learned that in Kansas City, and so by managing that flow within their choice express lane, freed up capacity on their existing lanes. You don't have to use the express lane, you can use the free lanes, but they wanted the ability to keep people moving.
With the money collected from those tolls possibly being used to pay for future road construction projects.
There are state DOTs all across the United States that are thinking about how can they accelerate project delivery so it doesn't take 30 to 40 years to build out our infrastructure system here in Northwest Arkansas.
The scope of the study, Conklin says, will go beyond just Interstate 49.
I-49 does not exist by itself. It exists with all of our arterials, overpasses, underpasses, our frontage roads, our north-south arterials alongside of it.
Let's turn our attention to the national stage now. Several states have already wrapped up high-stakes primaries, including Maine, where a controversial Democrat has advanced to face a battle-tested Republican in the state's senatorial race. Hannah Brandt has been following that race and others and has more from the nation's capital.
The primary results are setting up a high-stakes race in Maine. It'll likely be one of the most closely watched contests in the entire country this fall. Democratic candidate Graham Plattner is trying to unseat Republican Senator Susan Collins. Plattner did win the Democratic primary despite a series of recent controversies, including inappropriate texts he sent to women other than his wife, allegations of threatening behavior in his past relationships, a tattoo he had of a Nazi symbol, and past vulgar comments he made online. Ultimately, Maine voters looked past all those scandals and selected Plattner as their nominee, but now he faces an even bigger battle in taking on Collins, who's represented Maine in the Senate for nearly 30 years.
I've made mistakes in my life, mistakes that I regret, that I live with, and that I continue to learn from. And I'm still far from perfect. But every day I wake up and I try to be a little bit better and a little bit kinder than I was the day before.
We are expecting both parties to pump money and resources into this race in the months ahead. Democrats see this Maine seat as critical to their path to take back the Senate majority. They ultimately need to net 4 Senate seats in the midterms to make that happen. And there were also big primary races in South Carolina, Nevada, and North Dakota, with President Trump's endorsement once again proving powerful, with his picks winning pretty much across the board. If we zoom in on South Carolina, the candidate he's backing, Pamela Avett, won enough support in the Republican primary for governor to advance to a runoff with Alan Wilson, beating out current Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who did not get the president's endorsement. And key White House ally Senator Lindsey Graham also bested his Republican challengers. Over in Nevada, the governor's race is shaping up to be pretty competitive, with Democratic primary winner Aaron Ford taking on current Republican Governor Joe Lombardo. At the White House, Hannah Brandt, News Nation.
As Hannah just mentioned, the gubernatorial race in South Carolina was another win for a Trump-backed candidate. Current Lieutenant Governor Pamela Avett picked up more votes than her nearest GOP opponent, but it wasn't enough to avoid that aforementioned runoff race. Andy Weber has more.
It was an amazing night. Having the governor by my side was great. My family, supporters, friends, and got a special call from President Trump before I took to the stage. That's always humbling.
South Carolina Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette celebrating her win Tuesday night during an interview with Queen City News. While Evette had the most votes, she did not have enough to win the primary outright. SC Attorney General Alan Wilson finishing in second, about 2 percentage points behind Evette.
I'm asking you to hire me to be your next governor. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to get to work.
Western Carolina University professor Chris Cooper said Tuesday's results indicate a runoff could also be incredibly close.
Not a big surprise, but at the same time, I think pretty notable, right? Here's somebody who got a Trump endorsement and still was not able to break 30% of the vote in the state of South Carolina in a Republican primary.
Evette and Wilson will now proceed to a runoff set for June 23rd. They'll have to spend the next few weeks firming up their support, as Cooper predicts turnout will be a lot lower than what we saw on primary day.
We could see maybe 40% of the vote show up in the runoff as opposed to the primary. I mean, this is, you only have one thing on the ballot. It's a couple of weeks later. It's kind of confusing for a lot of folks about whether they can even vote or not. So I would expect a significant drop off.
Early voting for the June 23rd runoff will begin June 17th and end on June 19th. Reporting in Fort Mill, I'm Andy Weber, Queen City News.
Meanwhile, the field is finally set in California after months of a crowded and often unpredictable gubernatorial primary race. With the primary now behind them, the two are turning their attention to the head-to-head battle for the state's highest office. California Capitol correspondent Etan Wallace has a preview of what could be one of California's most watched governor's races in recent years.
The race for California governor now down to two. Democratic former U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary and California Attorney General Xavier Becerra and Republican author, businessman, and former Fox News host Steve Hilton are projected to secure the top two spots in the June primary in advance to the November general election.
California has spoken loudly and proudly. I'm so humbled and honored to be moving on to the general election to become your next governor.
I'm going to be in the top two. The best thing about that is that now we know change is coming.
It comes after Democrat Tom Steyer officially conceded and put his endorsement behind Becerra, one of many endorsements Becerra received Tuesday. Among other big names backing his campaign, former Vice President Kamala Harris, current Governor Gavin Newsom, and California's U.S. Senators Alex Padilla and Adam Schiff. On the Republican side, several weeks ago, President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance endorsed Hilton, all in a state Hilton says needs new leadership.
Every single person in California who wants change will now have the chance to vote for it. And by the way, that is a majority of Californians.
This is an enormous uphill climb for Steve Hilton, not necessarily because of who he is, but because he has an R next to his name.
Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson notes the math alone is not on Hilton's side in a state where registered Democrats outnumber registered Republicans by about 2-1, a state that has not elected a Republican governor since Arnold Schwarzenegger 20 years ago.
Thinking about the Becerra-Hilton matchup, I think we really have to look at this as a D versus R matchup. And again, based on registration numbers in California, they heavily favor whoever the Democratic candidate is.
Levinson believes Hilton's message of change will resonate with many voters, but she adds that can only go so far in a state that is so heavily blue, a state where President Donald Trump lost in 2024 by a roughly 60-40 margin.
President Trump is not popular in California.
As for Becerra and what, if anything, could take him down,
past and scandals that have involved his staffers and advisors, could that hurt him? Absolutely. But I think the question is whether or not Democratic voters stay home as opposed to move over to Steve Hilton. I think most of them will decide that they just don't want to see a Republican in the White House and a Republican in the governor's mansion. And scandals may hurt Becerra, but I don't think they'll be fatal.
And General Election Day is November 3rd, 2026. At the state capitol, covering local news that matters, Etan Wallace, Fox 40 News.
Redistricting is a topic we've been following closely, and Florida has become the latest state to redraw congressional lines. Last week, the Sunshine State's highest court issued an opinion reading in part, "The people of Florida can rest assured that elections will take place this year under a redistricting law and an election code enacted by their legislature," end quote. Now, those who brought the case to the Florida Supreme Court call the opinion a travesty, while supporters say the new map better reflects the state's populace and their political leanings. Marilyn Parker has the latest from Tampa.
The Florida Supreme Court is blocking an effort looking to keep new Republican-drawn congressional maps from being used during this year's elections. The court's opinion reads in part, "The people of Florida can rest assured that elections will take place this year, which they will have their duly apportioned allotment of elected representatives in Congress."
This is a travesty, quite frankly, to see the Florida Supreme Court turn a blind eye to what we believe was an egregious power grab, partisan power grab, stripping away the voting rights of millions of Floridians.
Genesis Robinson is the executive director of Equal Ground Florida. The Black voting rights organization sued the state when the maps passed. Then it asked the High Court to intervene in the case. Equal Ground says the change would take Republicans from holding 20 House seats to 24, leaving Democrats with 4 seats. This week on Battleground Florida, political reporter Ty Russell asked Bay Area Congresswoman Laurel Lee, who is up for re-election and would be impacted by the changes, for her reaction to the maps.
I am confident that our state legislature considered the Florida's population, where people are moving, where they are living now, all of the things that they're required by law to consider in drafting new districts.
One justice who disagreed with the majority's decision said the legal issues raised in the complaint violates the Fair Districts Amendments. That law bans the drawing of maps for political purposes. The other 6 justices found denying this request reflects respect for the Constitution's allocation of judicial power. Both Lee and Robinson say what matters most is Election Day.
We ask that voters, if they get ready to go to the polls, they remember and they understand who stood on their side, who stood up for fair representation, who stood up to adhere to the Constitution, and who did not.
I am very confident that every registered Florida voter is going to have an opportunity to cast that ballot and have their voices heard.
As for the central issues that'll likely play a role at the ballot box this fall, the economy. The latest economic data from the federal government indicates inflation has accelerated for a 3rd consecutive month. But President Trump says there's another side to that number. News Nation's Nick Smith has more.
All eyes are on the Middle East to see if escalating tensions are going to further increase what we're paying at the pump. The May inflation numbers are out, and the consumer price index was 4.2%. The increase was brought on by the rising cost of things like food, medical care, and fuel. The Labor Department says higher energy costs are 60% of the reason for the spike in numbers. This is the 3rd month in a row for the CPI increase, and these numbers are the highest they've been in 3 years. A major CPI spike happened after the war in Iran started. According to President Trump, the numbers will, quote, come down like a rock once the war is over.
No, I love it. The numbers were great. You know what I really love? I love the inflation. You know why? Because as soon as this war is over, you know, I can say it now. Something you didn't know. Do you know we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil? Nobody knows it.
While inflation numbers are rising quickly, wages are not moving at the same pace.
We're seeing people at the lower income end of the spectrum putting essentials like food and other things on credit cards and carrying that balance. You don't see that in the middle and upper middle and of course the wealthier areas. So it usually begins there because people are stretched. They've sort of worked through their savings and they don't have that now.
The higher costs come at a time when many Americans are traveling for the summer. The price of a plane ticket is up nearly 27% as a result of the war and fuel costs. And if you plan on traveling by car, there is good and bad news. The Wall Street Journal reports that car rental prices are down by about 6%, and it costs less to rent a car now than it did a year ago. But keep in mind, gas prices are up, so it may be a wash. Meanwhile, the Fed is meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday, and it's Kevin Warsh's first meeting as chair. President Trump wants interest rates to come down, but experts don't think that's going to happen at this next meeting. Marnie?
Going back to our top story again, Oklahoma voters taking to the polls this coming week. We will, of course, have complete election results on our next episode and on our website, 4stateshomepage.com. Until next time, thank you for going on the record with us.